Welcome to Raised on D&D podcast. Each month, Raised on D&D brings you inspirational interviews with tips and strategies to enrich your family's gaming experience. Your host for Raised on D&D has been a game master for 30 years and father to 3 gamers. Here is Nick Cardarelli.
Welcome back, gamers. I'm your host, Nick Cardarelli, and this is Raised on D&D. My next guest is from New Jersey. She is famous for her miniature painting and terrain building. She is the Tabletop Crafter Guild Master and is currently dungeon mastering on Twitch. Please welcome my very talented guest, Vee Muse. Hi, Vee.
Hello.
Well, thanks for being on the show. Our listeners are very familiar with the Crafting Muse, very excited about the miniature painting and the terrain building that you do and you share with everyone. But we want to get to know you more as a gamer. So can you take us back to your first experience with Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop role-playing games?
Absolutely. So I'm one of those people who have always sort of grazed along the whole concept of D&D. Like, I didn't even know it was D&D when it was related to D&D type of situation. Played a couple of video games. I did Baldur's Gate on PlayStation 2 back in college. Didn't even realize that was D&D. So there was that interlude. And then there were also books that I read when I was younger that tapped right into it. And I have a love for all types of mythology and lore. So I was pretty much incorporating different aspects of D&D into my life before it even became a part of my life. And when it finally started coming together, it was one of those aha moments for me. But in terms of playing the game for the very first time, it's something that I got into in earnest about 4 years ago with my family.
Wow. Okay. So it's fairly recent.
Yes.
Now, when you say family, do you mean siblings?
No, I mean my children.
Oh, okay. So
Yep.
your children. And so how did that all happen where you decided to get the books and sit down at the table and start gaming with them?
It was something where initially my husband started playing with them because I had actually gone through a second back surgery and I was laid up for the summer. And he took it on himself to teach them, to give them something to do as a distraction. And so they got into playing together with him first. And then when I started getting to the point where I could actually sit up again and want to move around just a little bit because I still couldn't do too much, I came and I joined them and I'd sit and play for a couple hours with them type of situation. And the more I played it, the more I realized, oh, this is something I can very much get into. And I very, very much was enjoying the whole process of you get to create this PC, give them this story, this interaction and the leveling up and watch how they grow and watching my kids do the same with their own PCs. It was, for me, it was practically addictive because it was fun watching it grow and grow and grow upon itself.
So how old were your children when you introduced them to, and you and your husband introduced them to Dungeons & Dragons?
They were little. The youngest one was about 3.5 at that time.
Okay.
So definitely young.
Yeah, mine were very little. In fact, so small that they were recognizing the numbers, learning numbers from the D20. So we started very early with ours as well. You have gone from sitting down for an hour or 2 session with the husband and the children. Then you start making these amazing terrain pieces and painting miniatures. So how does that happen? How did that start?
Again, it goes back to the kids at the table. And it was one of those things where he was doing things to get them engaged visually because little children, it helps to have something on the table to look at. But even if it's just like a hand-drawn map, it helps. But he got into watching DM Scotty, and he was in the Facebook page that DM Scotty had at that time. And so he was starting to do a couple little things. Now, for me, I, as a child, had made doll houses and furniture and all these types of things for my dolls and making worlds in my bedroom for the longest time. So when I saw him doing this thing where it was like building a little castle, I was looking at him like, what you doing? And he explained it. I'm like, I could do that. So I started making things. And then I too joined the group. And then I started sharing the things I was making. And it became the question of, hey, that's cool. How did you make it? Could you make a video? So being a former teacher, for me, hearing someone say, can you teach me? Like knee-jerk reaction is yes. So I actually sat down with my old laptop, which was like a flip screen deal. So I could bend it back and forth in different directions. So I flipped it over so I could bend the screen down. It was a very janky setup. It was not professional in any way, shape, or form. So I filmed with my laptop aimed down at my table. I tried to do it in one shot so ever possible and everything like that. And that's literally how things got started with the channel. And those videos are still up there. I'm not going to remove them just because it shows the growth and it's something I want people to see. It's like you can grow and develop as you go along. You don't have to be pristine perfect from the, right outside the gate. So that's really how it started getting into doing things. And it just snowballed from there, quite frankly.
Wow. A lot of families with miniatures and terrain, that can become an expensive aspect of the hobby. And what's wonderful about your show, The Crafting Muse, is you can show how just using foam and hot glue and paint, and you can make your own scenes for the table. And that makes families like mine on a budget, makes it a whole lot easier on us to really beautify the table.
Yeah. I like to say I make trash look pretty.
I'm always amazed when it's just things laying around the house and it turns into this amazing terrain. So you start putting things up on DM Scotty's Facebook page, and people are saying, how do you do that? And then you start filming. But I just watched the lunch break episode from last month with the octopus, which turned out just gorgeous. You start the channel and it starts picking up speed, doesn't it? And it's kind of, like you said, kind of a whirlwind.
Yes.
How does the transition go from mom sometimes comes to the table and play, now mom's making things for the table, now mom's putting the stuff online? How do you end up behind the GM screen?
His name is Nerdarchist Dave. I will give full credit to Dave for getting me behind the DM screen, because I was a reluctant DM. I dug in my heels when people were like, oh, you really should DM, because they'd watch me play as a player on streams, which I still do. And they're like, oh, come on, DM. It's great. You should do it. DM. For me, I'm like, nope. I like being a player. I like just sitting down and telling my part of the story and letting my character do stuff. And for me, the whole, getting behind the screen was daunting. I thought it was all of this, that, and the other thing, and, this mythical veil that I had yet to lift type of situation. So Dave basically gave me a carrot that made it worth trying out. He said, how'd you like to DM at the castle? And it was one of those things where I was like, what now? I was honestly floored. I vividly remember, looking at the phone again, I'm like, did you send this to the wrong person? Because it's like, I haven't DM'd yet. Like, this is the first, I'm actually considering. He goes, well, you have so many months, see you at the castle type of situation.
Now, this is Dungeons and Dragons in a castle, which that was 2019, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So last year, you're taken to England to run Dungeons and Dragons for the first time, and in a castle.
Yeah.
So I saw the advertisements for it. I did the math. I wanted to go so bad, and I just couldn't make it happen. Was it everything it could be?
And more. It was wonderful. It was one of those things. We jokingly called it summer camp for adults who like Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that's what I was hoping it would be.
You were just in it the whole entire time, and people who love it and are immersed in it and enthusiastic about it. It was your people. You just sat there and you discussed things and you got into things, and the table play was fantastic. I even walk around and listen in on some of the other games that were going on. And it was just, you could hear the enjoyment, you could hear the laughter, you could hear the rah, and it was just, you couldn't recreate it if you wanted to, unless you were back at the exact place with a similar group of people doing it all over again. It's unique and it's special in and on itself.
Wow. Now, had you been to England before?
Yes, I had. I've been a few times, and I actually lived in London for a little over 6 months for a semester abroad type of situation. But that was, lived there, had a loft, had a bank account and everything like that. So I was a resident of London.
Wow. How did it go with the castle? Did everything go off without a hitch?
Once we got there. What happened with that castle is for 48 hours before we were supposed to leave, got an email that the castle we were supposed to go to, and I'm not kidding, this is exactly what the phrasing was, the castle has been seized by the government.
Wow. What?
Yes. Which is not something you want to read when you're supposed to be going to this event called D&D in a castle.
No.
But much to Regency Encounters' credit, they pulled it together. They found another castle because, England and castles, they have a lot of them. And they were able to find another castle, different location, obviously. But within those 48 hours, people got there, people got set up, and we started getting things going. There was a lot of scramble behind the scenes on our part, helping them out and getting things where they needed to be because stuff had to get brought over from different places and everything like that. But overall, it truly was an amazing experience and really very cool. So I was thrilled to bits when they asked me to come back again this year.
Wow, that is incredible. Now, that's usually a summer event. Is that still happening this year?
Well, it had, the past 2 times had been summer mode. They had actually shifted it to September for this year.
Oh, they did. Okay.
They did. So it's scheduled for September. We're kind of all waiting on, pins and needles to see what happens, just because of the nature of what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But it's one of those things where, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, everything works out and it's safe and all of that goodness, because it'd be wonderful to see all these people. Like, I've been back and forthing with a few of the other DMs, and we're all like, we'd really like to see you, but we don't know. But it's one of those things where if it gets shifted, I still would love to do it in some capacity if possible.
Now, have you been able to take the crafting aspect of Dungeons and Dragons and bring it home to the table with your children? Are they enjoying building and miniature painting and things like that as well?
They have been intrigued by the whole miniature painting. They've both painted minis in the past. My youngest has actually, I think he's crossing over into actually wanting to learn more and do more with minis, because he was painting the WizKids Optimus Prime. And this was like the first mini he actually sat down and he's like, I want to make sure the colors are going in the right place. I want to make sure I'm using the right colors. It was a couple of sitting down and painting sessions for him, which he's never done in the past. Before, it's like 10 minutes and done. And he's off and running away. And I'm watching him let it dry on his little art table that's next to my art studio area. So I think for him, he's definitely become more intrigued by painting it and recreating something that looks more like what he has envisioned in his mind, for getting it painted up from just, plain white or black or whatever it is, into this, colorful creation that he can proudly put on display. So that has sort of parlayed itself into an interest for him. But for them, for both of them, it's more the actual game running itself that they're intrigued by and that they're getting involved with. They both are making NPCs and PCs. They've both DM'd their own little separate homebrew games. My oldest has run a few for us now. Yeah. So they're already getting behind the DM screen, which is lovely. And it's wonderful to see, especially because it shows off their creativity and what they have already picked up just as playing at the table type of stuff into turning it into what they're doing as DMs. It's incredible. And it's wonderful to watch and see unfold.
Have you seen lessons and the skills that children learn at the gaming table expressed outside of the game and outside of the home with your children?
Oh, yes. I don't mind parent-teacher conferences at all. The teachers, they are very much, they love the fact that they're great at problem solving. They're good at teamwork. They have this creative streak that they put to use in their creative writing and writing in general. Comprehension, mathematics, like there's a lot of points they hit upon that I know are directly in relation to the fact that they have been playing this game that has been helping them this whole time while they've been having fun with it.
And do you share with the teachers the fact that that is attributed partially from Dungeons and Dragons?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I honestly have no problem letting people know. It's one of those things where I'm not your classic soccer mom holding her latte type of thing. I am that mom, that mom with the funky colored hair. But the last parent-teacher meeting this year, I think I had 5 teachers wanting to learn how to play the game by the time I was done.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah. And, and years ago, it would have been hard to do that 20 years ago, to bring up, oh, yeah, we played Dungeons and Dragons at the house. That's not something we could have done 20 years ago. So it's incredible. I know that everything's kind of organically grown out of casually gaming at the table to make your terrain, to painting miniatures, being online, then being whisked off to England to run games. Have you brought game mastering back to the home table, have given your husband a break from the GM screen? And how did that go? How was that received?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. There have been a few times that I've run a game for the kids, and it was great watching them react to. I've always done voices. Like the whole thing with my doing voices is not because I was a DM. Like you can ask my former students. I was doing voices when I was reading out loud to them, type of thing. I was that crazy teacher, yes. But I love doing voices and watching them interact with the different NPCs and getting a kick out of, they like the one will actually try and switch NPCs to make me switch my voices quickly. I'm going to go talk to this one now. So it was great to see them engage that way and want to do more and role play more as a result too. So that was a fun thing to bring to the table. And my oldest even asked if I would do a party for him, just DMing for a few of his buddies for one of his birthdays, which was absolutely awesome and I loved doing.
How did that go?
It went really well. It was one of those things where my son, obviously very seasoned veteran, has played it for quite a while. He knows what he's doing. He was my little helper with certain situations because there were two who had never played before. And then we had our expert at the table because he'd been DMing for a month. He got his starter kit. So he was professional. He knew exactly what he was doing and knew how to DM and everything like that. So I had the two boys who were experienced enough to understand what was going on and how the system worked, which was great. But it was really more fun watching the two boys who were new to it learn how things work, but also how they were thinking outside the box in terms of how to make it work for what they wanted to do. So that was for me even more fascinating to watch unfold, because we had the one where because they were just learning the game and everything, that I wasn't making it a heavy combat situation. They had like a couple of little encounters. There was no biggie, so to speak. So I was getting them used to how ranged weapons and spells worked. So there were archery targets in an archery field and they were lined up and the initiative was rolled for who would go first to shoot their target. And our little wizard got to shoot his target first and rolled enough damage where the target was basically obliterated first go around.
Now, I know since you're the Crafting Muse, were there little archery targets on the table?
Yes, there were. There were little archery targets, and I even had like little barrels, and like there was stuff. It was an archery. It was a little archery field right there. Wow.
So he disintegrates it.
Oh, gone.
His first go.
Yeah, first go it was gone. So he sat there and he watched the other three go through shooting their targets and everything like that. And I get back to him and he has this little pregnant pause and he goes, can I mend my target and then try again next round? And I just sat there and I'm like, the size is right. Yes, why not? Let's do it. So we had it where he mended his target and we went back through another round. And honestly, the way the kids were playing, it wasn't that it was like, okay, 6 seconds round. It was, they were interacting with each other because it's kids. They were often doing this and doing the other thing. So I'm thinking feasibly, yeah, it's been about a minute. So I didn't want to discourage it either. So I'm like, yes, absolutely. You can mend your target with this cantrip. Go for it. So he mended his target. He waited for the next round. And sure enough, he practiced another ranged spell on his target afterwards, which was wonderful. And I sat there, I was like, you bravo, little man. And the other one pulled a similar situation when they finally got to fight something. They were fighting giant moths. And these moths had come out and they were flying around. And I get to him in his turn. And he says, I have a question. I'm like, okay, sure. Thinking, of course you're going to have questions. This is your first time. Can I use light to attract the moths to this thing if I touch it? And I just sat there and I'm like, oh, you're a clever one. He goes, because like they're attracted to the light bulbs out on the porch and everything like that. So wouldn't they be attracted to this? And I'm not going to tell him no because he's not wrong. So I did the whole thing. I'm like, you know what? Let's see. We'll roll the dice and see if they're attracted to it. And I left it to the dice to determine if that was going to be the factor. And sure enough, it rolled where, yep, they went right over to that flame and they had disadvantage because they were distracted by the flame. And the kids loved it. It was such a fun thing to see them think outside the box and want to problem solve in different ways than I would have even anticipated.
No, that's incredible. Those are things we take for granted. Mend, light, those are level 0 or in 5th edition cantrips. I mean, those are, it's not fireball, it's not magic missile. And the fact that they looked at those abilities and went, wow, that's something I can use. And with the moths, thinking about, instead of them just being giant monsters, He's looking at them as moths and saying, what do I know about moths and how can I use that to my advantage? And that's incredible.
Yeah.
Those kind of critical thinking skills are something that I think that our children pick up from playing the game. What are some of the skills and abilities that you're hoping that your children will take away from the game table and go into adulthood with?
Definitely problem solving. I love the fact that this is giving them methods and means of learning how to work around things, that there isn't always a direct approach, that sometimes you have to take the indirect method. Just because the problem is presented right in front of you, it doesn't mean you have to jump right in and attack the bad guy. Maybe talk to the bad guy. It may not be a bad guy that you're interacting with. It might just be someone having a bad day. Or it may be, the door is locked, but guess what? If you go outside, there's a window that's left wide open. So definitely problem solving skills. I want them to have that through life, because let's face it, that's what life is going to keep throwing at you. There are problems that you have to solve. Simple as that. Definitely compassion as well, because I see that with them interacting with different NPCs, even with their own PCs with each other. It's good to see that they're taking time to think about, well, why would this NPC or why did this other person make this move that I wouldn't have thought of doing or wanted to do in combat and things like that. So I would love for them to, go into the world able to solve things and be compassionate in process and be flexible and be ready for anything, quite frankly, as they become adults.
I know that everything's happened so organically, but now the Crafting Muse channel, thousands and thousands of subscribers, amazing internet sensation, your game mastering on Twitch. What's the future for the Crafting Muse? But are there some targets? Are there some goals that now you're shooting for?
I think I've pretty much landed in it because I've gotten a job with WizKids.
Wow. Amazing. WizKids, I love their hero clicks. I love their Star Trek miniatures. WizKids has been a part of my family's game table forever. And so now you're working for WizKids. Now, what are you doing for them?
I'm doing PR and marketing. So it's essentially what I've been doing for my own channel.
Wow. Oh, how does that happen?
Oh God, it's because I have followers and subscribers, and I very much believe in trying to do what I can on my end to help people out. I will go and look at different job listings in the industry. Like if I see something pop up on Twitter, I will make a point to read the job description and retweet it if I feel it's something that might be beneficial. It might connect with someone who follows me, type of thing. So I was literally putting around, just kind of like, okay, this company, that company, let me check out WizKids, see what they have going. And as I was scrolling through, I realized, they have something for PR and marketing. And I read through the description, I'm like, I could do this. So I quickly pulled up a resume and did a cover letter, sent it out. And because I already had a relationship with them, it wasn't terribly long till I heard back from them at all. And we just started talking and things developed, and here we are. So it was, wow. It was one of those sort of, meant to be situations. I was meant to go to that website and check it out and then sort of open that door and see what happens with it.
And what I love about it too is you were just trying to help other people out, especially at this time, people needing work. You're just trying to help your viewers and your subscribers by putting it out there, letting them know. Maybe they're not thinking I can work for a game company, and you're putting it out there for them, and you just you're helping people, and then it turned out to help you, and that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So Vee, all of this is amazing. 4 years ago, only experience with D&D was Baldur's Gate in high school. Baldur's Gate, by the way, amazing video game. Loved it. And now working for WizKids, amazing. And all of that from sitting down at the table with your husband and your children to try Dungeons and Dragons. Can you give our listeners some advice on how to get the children to the table to sit down and try tabletop role-playing games?
No, sure. First of all, trust that your kids can handle it. Give them the benefit of the doubt, because I know a lot of parents who are reluctant and hold off probably longer than they need to because they're afraid they can't handle it. Really, what you can do as a parent is be aware of what it is your children are already engaging with when it comes to the cartoons and the books and the movies that they're watching, because those in and of themselves will be great guides for you to understand what it is they can handle, what they enjoy about it, and what they want to explore with it. It's something where if they're watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and there's the fighting and the hi-ya type of stuff happening, it's one of those things like, okay, they can handle combat. And if it's something where you're not comfortable having it, bloody, gory end, then okay, the bad guy disappears or they turn into dust instead. Or there's different ways of handling the ending of the conflict or the battle itself. Same thing for, if it's too scary, watch the different shows they're doing. If they're handling spooky themed shows and they're laughing, guess what? They can handle that level of a jump scare type of scary situation. Would I take them to Barovia? Maybe not. But there are different ways of incorporating the game and making it suit their needs as children, but still have the system work for you entirely as a family. Absolutely. You just have to be willing to adjust and tweak things here and there. You can very easily go to already created modules, pick and choose what you need to from them, and adjust it to fit towards what you want to have at the table experience.
Can't wait to see where this whirlwind takes you next. Can't wait to see your next video with the Crafting Muse. Thank you.
Thank you.